everyone. Happy Halloween and welcome to the latest Kolpak and Izzo podcast. No trick-or-treats here as North Dakota State set to return home and welcome in the Northern Iowa Panthers in the next-to-last home game, penultimate home game, the final game for the Bison before they actually take a week off. And after that, just 2 games to go in the regular season. Kolpak, I put out my highly controversial candy rankings. You don't strike me as a candy guy. Your body's a temple. You don't put anything in the. Do you have a candy?
I do love chocolate.
Okay,
and I have to resist temptation all the time. Snickers is a go-to.
All right.
The Hershey's Kisses. Just the pure chocolate.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And it's not too much.
Can't go wrong with that.
Small.
Yep. Although you could have like 5 or 6 of them.
Chocolate chip cookies.
That's good
goodness.
too.
I got something scary for you.
Yeah, what do you got?
Let's just go right out of the bat as long as we're talking about Halloween. Northern Iowa. Scoring offense, 111th in the country out of 123 FCS teams.
Averaging 16 points a game.
All right. You take that, okay. Yep. But then scoring defense, the Panthers are 95th.
Never think you'd see that.
What the hell is going on here?
Averaging allowing 31 points per game. Yeah, there's a lot to it, I think. There's a lot of levels to it. I think you hit some of it on Monday in terms of funding of where they're at. The portal, certainly.
Well, let's talk about the funding before we get too far here. And according to the Knight Commission, and you can take it for what it's worth on how teams report it, but in terms of football budget, according to the Knight Commission, the Panthers are last in the Missouri Valley Football Conference at $3 million plus, which is
nothing,
less than half than NDSU and South Dakota State, and really programs in that area.
Yeah, you're not going to. You have to invest. If there's anything you've learned in this day and age, you got to spend the money. You got to get money in. You got to spend it if you're going to be good in football.
And is it finally catching up to Northern Iowa having a lack of funding? Because maybe they've done more with less. So you're talking about Mark Farley.
Yeah.
And we mentioned this on Monday on your show, that is Mark Farley on the hot seat. The Panthers are 2-6. He's got 2 years left on his contract, so they're certainly not going to buy him out. No. But is he on the hot seat? And I guess the more I thought about it and the more I thought about the budget and the implications of the budget, I would say no, because he's done more with less.
Correct.
I think that's probably something that I really didn't think about until this year.
And also, the constant influx of his staff that changes, it seems like every year he's losing a coordinator or two.
Well, they don't pay.
Right.
I mean,
we know that is factual evidence that we've been told from former assistants that have worked there that have come up to Fargo. So you can read between the lines on that's the reason why there's been constant turnover on staff, is simply because of that, where, hey, if I can make more and go there, I'm going to go and leave. And that's what we've seen. I think also you can't underestimate the amount of guys they have had leave through the portal as well. There's a handful of guys there that they've lost that, boy, those guys were dudes. We're not that far removed from them playing 2019. They made the playoffs. Remember, they made the quarters that year. They had a really, really good team. They had weapons all over. Heck, the last time they were here in Fargo, they had a first-round draft pick playing on the offensive line. Trevor Penning was a first-round pick for the Saints that year.
His brother's a prospect.
Jared's pretty good, too. He's the starting left tackle for the Panthers this year.
Okay, we'll talk about the portal there. And, again, I think that directly goes to funding. Yes. Because NDSU lost Eli Green late in the portal window. But they didn't lose anybody else. And I think you can put a direct correlation between NDSU's the Green and the Gold Collective and Northern Iowa, I'm guessing, doesn't have a collective for football. Do they even have much less cost of attendance or Alston payments?
I know they have the Alston payment. I know they have it for basketball. They have it for men's basketball.
But probably not 90 guys for football.
No.
Like NDSU does.
No. And, they've decided that they're prioritizing, obviously, with Jake's program with men's hoops. And even though they've been okay, they haven't been world beaters in men's hoops either. When you look at the two standout programs at that school, neither one of them have been in great shakes over the last handful of years.
And now we've heard whispers and behind-the-scenes comments that Northern Iowa in the last 2 years, or the University of North Dakota, has not lost a recruit to Northern Iowa in the last 2 years.
Right.
In the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
And when NDSU and Northern Iowa, when NDSU first got into this league in 2008, Craig Bohl obviously knew that UNI was winning the Twin Cities recruiting battles with NDSU. It was no contest. And so Craig said, here's the deal. We got to turn that around if we're ever going to turn our program around and make it a top-notch FCS program. And they did that. They started beating UNI to key recruits in the Twin Cities area. Now UND's beating them. South Dakota State, I'm guessing for a while, has been beating them on recruits.
Right. I would say now on the pecking order of FCS teams that are in the Twin Cities, they're a solid 5. Be the Bison, the Jacks, Coyotes are in there, and UND's in there. I mean, who else is? I mean, we're just talking FCS teams.
Well, eventually, let's not rule out St. Thomas for a guy or two.
Correct. I would imagine they'll get into the mix there. But I would say they're a solid 5 after the 4 Dakota schools of what they have done to establish themselves in the Twin Cities. Yeah, you're right. I will never forget a story where I want to say it was Zach Vra committed out of Rosemount to the Bison, and the UNI coaches they had to lock the doors of the school to keep the UNI coaches out from going in there to talk to him. Like, no, the commitment is done. He's on board. That's how, I don't know if vicious is the right word or aggressive it used to be in the old days, go back 15 years ago.
Was Mr. Football.
You're right.
In Minnesota.
Correct. 16 years ago now, the fall of 2009 when he committed to go to
Is he still
NDSU.
doing, what is his ice
Donuts.
cream business?
Donuts. I believe so. I believe he's still
There's
donut
ice
man.
cream and then donuts.
Yeah. It's all right combo.
Yeah.
You got me already hungry here. We're talking about candy early on. They still have some dudes. Ty Edwards, their running back, he's a monster. He's 6'4",
229.
He's a huge guy. You can't miss him. He's got 4 touchdowns. He can break a long one at 56 yards. But the quarterback issue they have not been able to solve. And that's something I would say, Theo Day over the last couple of years was the guy. But you look back at some of the quarterbacks they had, I mean, they've had mostly statues for the most part. They haven't had guys that get out on. Aaron Bailey would be the last one, and that was 9 years ago when he was the quarterback. Since then, they haven't had that dual threat guy that can really hurt you.
The one positive stat for Northern Iowa is Ty Edwards averaging 6 yards a carry, 102 attempts, 6 yards a carry. Even Hickson, how do you pronounce it? Amari, yep, 5.0 yards per carry. So that's not bad. The running backs are getting some positive yardage.
They had. You remember Eli Dunn, and Cliven will never let me forget this because I gave him all sorts of preps and the Bison tore him apart. His younger brother, Aiden, is one of the guys fighting with Matt Schecklman for the job, and Schecklman's been the guy over the last handful of games, but it's been you mentioned it's 16 points a game. They just can't do anything offensively.
Was he the guy that Brad Ambrosius cut in two?
He cut his head off, yeah. It was Eli Dunn. Yeah, that was 2016, yeah. That would have been a penalty these days. That was not a penalty in 2016 when that happened. Remarkably, that was not a penalty.
Remarkably, his head stayed on.
His head wasn't in the helmet, yes, when it came off. He's talking about another Halloween with the Headless Horseman on that. But that just goes to show you on that how many years, and you go back, obviously, everyone talks about the Pashal incident in 2009 and what Bull said in 2008 when the Bison went there. Heck, you can go all the way back, Jeff, when the Bison were voted preseason number 1 in the Valley before they even played
2008.
A game. And Northern Iowa took that personally.
They should have.
We're a long ways from that with this program right now, and it's disappointing to see because they're going to miss the playoffs again for the 3rd year in a row.
No, I guess, and they're still Northern Iowa.
Yep, they still got dudes.
I still feel like this could be a game if the Bison don't show up. But last year, defensively, the NDSU just ran right over them.
Yep, they picked off Day 4 times in the game. They got to him. The Bison scored, 21 points in the first quarter. I mean, they roared out, and I think it was 42-27, something like that. UNI scored a late garbage time touchdown.
This game will still bring the juice for the fans? Is it still Northern Iowa? Is it still the purple? Is it still Mark Farley? Is there an element of
It's not going to be. Yeah, it's not going to be what we had a couple of weeks ago with South Dakota State. I can tell you that.
Well, I'm not saying that.
No. To put it bluntly, no. I don't think it'll have the same juice like past UNI. And now, granted, they haven't been here in 3 years, so maybe seeing the Panther logo or the UNI logo on the helmet, maybe get them going.
Well, I think there's got to be that.
I would hope so, but I don't think it's going to be what it was, certainly what it was 10, 12 years ago. No way. That was peak of both teams, of Bison football and UNI football. When they played twice in 2015, the Carson touchdown to Darius Shepard, the Easton Stick game where he came in the playoffs, that was as good as it got between these two teams. That was the championship game that year.
Yeah, it was.
That year.
Northern Iowa wins that. They win national title.
Yeah. Yep. Whoever won that game was going to win the championship that year.
They're also missing the deep guy too. Just looking at the stats, they don't have that explosiveness on the outside that I've seen in the past.
Well, and more importantly, and defensively, they don't have the dude up front. I mean, even Xavier Williams, he was there last year. They don't have that guy that just a James Ruffin, a guy that you're like, holy cow, how are they going to block this guy? They don't. Northern Iowa doesn't bring that to the table at all, and that's the thing. If you want to talk about what they're missing, what they don't have, that to me is glaring. Jeff, is they don't have that guy to stop anybody.
Yeah, rushing defense, they're giving up 168 yards a game.
Well,
passing 237.
UND did whatever they wanted offensively when they played in Grand Forks a couple weeks ago. And I'll throw this in this to be completely fair. They've had a brutal schedule. They went and played Nebraska. They played Hawaii. They played two FBS. That goes to our first point, funding. They need the money. That's the only reason you play two is because you need the cash. That's the only reason you do it. Then they went and played South Dakota State. They played South Dakota, got ripped by both of those teams. They went to UND, and now they got to play the Bison, sandwiched around Mo State as well.
Here it is, November, and they've played 3 home games.
Yeah. Yep.
Valpo, South Dakota State.
Know what happened there.
Missouri State.
And they gave up 49 last week to Mo State. So,
and really should have lost at St. Thomas.
Yeah. Yep. Had to pull that game out. So, when you say that, if I think, they probably got one more great effort in them, and I think that's coming on Saturday.
It would be this.
I think so, for what they have coming down the stretch run. Let's chat on the Bison before I want to talk about the rankings here. The Bison still are beat up. They're going to get a couple guys back. Looks like Jailen Duffie probably going to play. Will Mostaert likely going to play. Potentially Mekhi Collins. All those guys did not play last week, Jeff, but the depth of this team has certainly been tested, and boy, the guys that have been out there. Look at Enoch Sibamana made his
Passed
first
the
start.
test.
Yeah, they've played really, really well. Alta Peter, I thought, had a really good game last week too.
I think he's worked himself into
Austin. You're talking
being
about
trusted.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you look at. I still think the defensive end. You got Nenny has been solid. Rokes has been solid. After that,
I think Will's going to probably go back to that spot if he's healthy. Will's going to play D. I would think with what they have up the middle. Heisman's played. We talked about this. Mm-hmm. Cody's playing his best ball. Eli's had a great season, which they needed out of the defensive tackle spot. Yep, Keenan Wilson's played a lot of reps too, and his trajectory is only going upwards as well. And you have Dutenheffer there. I think you're rock solid up the middle. The linebacker now with Kubitz being healthy. Do they go back to what they were doing? Because that worked with Nick being the guy in the middle.
I
wouldn't change that up if I was running things, but I'm not running things.
I wouldn't either. I think that's a spot where when you look at what changed from the non-conference to conference, that was one of the things. I don't think you mess with that.
Yeah. You did bring up on Monday, and for people that missed it, I'll bring it up now. When Oscar Benskin comes back, is that his job? Because Sibamana is playing at a spot right now where it's high-level football right now.
That's a great question, and I guess I would play the best guy. And to me, I think Enoch's been a little more explosive, although Oscar was coming off his best game.
Best game was against the Jacks, and then he got hurt in that game. That was definitely, I thought his best game was the Bison prior to getting hurt there.
Yeah, so I'm not going to make that decision, Dom. No way.
But that's an interesting one to bring up.
That's a Grant Olson decision.
Logan Kopp should be back as well. Kopp dressed but didn't play.
He could have played
in the game
week,
against a game against Murray State. But that's how it looks like defensively. Offensively, we mentioned Collins is the only the one glaring there. Also looks like Empey will probably sit with the bye week coming, and that means Jack Lewinsky, who looked like he played pretty well at left guard in starting for Empey last week. They also got Bo Johnson in at right tackle. That's the future of the Bison offensive line that got some reps last week.
It says a pretty good something. It says well for the future when you got redshirt freshmen stepping in the offensive line, and they feel pretty good about it.
Well, you think next year, you want to just do this. Empey will be a sophomore, as will Lewinsky and Johnson. Those are 3 guys with Fraley being back too.
So we think Johnson goes to left tackle? Why are we doing this?
Potentially. No, you could. You could do it. I'll entertain you for a moment. Yeah,
okay.
Probably. Empey will be probably the left guard. He could be the center too. They like him there.
Fraley's just a sophomore.
Yep. You've got some flexibility, but they've got some options. Let's just say the best way for 2025. Speaking of 2025, here's the segue, because Polasek dropped a nugget that I had to turn around. I looked at you and I looked at McFeely on Tuesday when addressing about Cole Wisneski. Not only potential of coming back and playing this year, he said next year, Jeff. I would have bet yours and my paycheck there's no way that Cole Wisneski would have been here next season.
I think he prefaced it with talking about the scouts he trusts, that they want to see a little more. They want to see a little more tape before what Tim said called final, meaning final evaluation.
Yep.
I don't think they've seen enough.
He also said, for now, like in terms about Cole coming back for now. He added that in, that caveat.
And does he take some semblance of education from Trey Lance, even though Trey was a high-round pick and taking the money was the right decision ultimately probably for his long-term future? Yep. But Cole is not going to be a high-round draft pick. So does he take some semblance of – the knock on Trey was he didn't play enough in college.
Didn't see enough pictures.
Enough pictures. Yep. And does Cole Wisneski need to stay around and see enough pictures more at safety? Because he's only played 1 year at safety.
I think so. Here's the thing. Like, how many games – the fact that he's talking about – you brought this up on Monday, and it's a great point. It's not like he's hinting at it, Kolpak. He's speaking – Polasek I'm talking about. He's speaking about it like it's going to happen. It's not like, well, we're not
once
sure.
You get to this point.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
He's being so open about it, it looks like that it's only a matter of when, not if, on Wisneski.
I think he wouldn't have gone to that level of talking about it if he wasn't more sure about it.
Right. That this is going to happen.
It wasn't a wild guess.
No. That's why, I mean, are we talking Mostaert after the bye week that we're going to see him out there playing?
I think in the bye week, they're going to find out where he's at as far as his running, change of direction. And once Tim said, when Jim Kramer gets it, you pass the baton from the training staff to the director of strength and conditioning. And once Jim gets him, that's more of a football thing now.
Then it's a football call on when he comes back. Boy, if you're adding Cole Wisneski in for that regular season finale at South Dakota, which could have massive implications on it, that is all we've done this year is talk about guys that are out and not. You add now we're talking about adding a guy and it's an All-American that you're going to add back. That's not your typical addition to the lineup on November 16th or November 23rd.
All of a sudden, this defense, who after East Tennessee State, we're wondering, wow, this ain't looking good.
No. Who are they going to, like, they're getting the Valley play. Who are they going to stop teams that run the ball?
What's South Dakota State going to do against them?
What's UND
How many times
do
we say that?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it looks like they've, that's coaching.
Yeah.
That's coaching is what they've done right there. But that's another storyline to keep an eye on now is the potential of seeing number 31 back out there, which I know he never really closed the door on it, Jeff, but when we spoke with him during Polasek, when we spoke with him during fall camp and then during week one, it just seemed like if it was not completely shut, there was nothing really ajar with him coming back.
I had the feeling he was gonzo for the year. I really did. Yep. I just, when Tim said, don't talk to me for 8, 9, 10 weeks, I just sort of took that as a season.
Yep.
I did. And then, so when we met with them after the Murray State game down there, and we said,
you said to him, it's 10 weeks.
It's been 8, 9, 10 weeks. I'm going to throw the question at you.
But he answered, and again, how open he was when he answered that. And that was in front of all of us. It was, cameras were there, the whole 9 yards. He was way more open than I thought he would be.
Tim's prepared. He's prepared for us. He is. Yep. He's not answering stuff and throwing stuff against a wall. Yep. He thinks about these things. There's no...
Right. He knows it's coming.
That's the way I feel, right? He prepares for our questions like a good head coach would.
Should.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he knew the Wisneski question was going to come.
Had to be coming. They can't be caught off guard on that. So we'll see. That's something to keep an eye on here after. I mean, that's probably topic 1A when we get back from the bye week is what's the status of Cole Wisneski. I don't think you're going to see, you get the game notes on a Tuesday before Mostaert and see number 31 in there. I don't think they're going to do that.
Where does Cole Wisneski shop for groceries?
Hey,
does anybody know?
I'll tell you this.
Let's take turns stocking the grocery mart. Hey, Cole.
When we went to Southern Illinois, and we fly with the team, you guys fly on the company plane, we fly on the team charter, and I saw him at the airport as we're getting ready, and he was out of the boot. I'm like, oh. And I said, hey, he said, yep, procedure went great. Went even better than they could have thought. And kind of the spidey sense was going then, Jeff, like, okay, well, we'll see. It still seemed like a far-flung idea then, but now here we are on October 31st, and man, it could be a real possibility he comes back. That's quite the addition.
Well, certainly it's a real possibility that they're going to try.
Yep. Whether he plays or not, that's a whole other deal. But, you mentioned about 2025 real quick. That guy's back. Man, they'll be all right next season. Last thing before we wrap up is the initial FCS playoff rankings came out. The only one that's going to be revealed before Selection Sunday on November the 24th. North Dakota State was 1, Montana State 2, South Dakota State 3, South Dakota 4, and UC Davis 5. Give me your initial take on seeing 1 through 5.
Number one is they valued NDSU's wins over ranked teams over the FBS win by Montana State. So I think that's a big deal because that would be my one question.
Correct.
Montana State's been unbeaten with an FBS win. The Bison have 1 loss, but have more quality wins is what I would imagine I take from that. So if you're an NDSU fan and you run the table, that's a pretty good sign.
You're home. You're the
there.
1 seed, and you've got, especially now with how the bracket is, you actually get a 16 seed to come into you. You're not going to play South Dakota State or the ilks of that. Now with the bracket, how it's formatted, Jeff, you're not going to get, like the Bison last year were the quote-unquote the 9 seed, and Montana State had to play them in the second round. There's no way that's going to happen anymore, which is finally fair.
A little surprised at Montana, number 10, but I guess I don't know.
Definitely surprised at that.
Not sure who would you put there? You ranked the poll.
Had Tarleton. I had Tarleton State there, and Tarleton came close to having an FBS win. They're 7-1. They're unbeaten against the FCS. Yeah, they have their monster game as the end of the year. They play Central Arkansas, which is going to be for that league championship. I would have put them at 10 over Montana, especially because they lost to Weber. They gave up 55 to Weber at home.
Yeah.
That game was in Missoula.
And you're 10.
I didn't agree with that one. The rest, I don't have much beef with that. SEMO is at 6, which, by the way, that game suddenly looks a lot better. SEMO's coming to Fargo next year. That game's all right. Idaho at 7. They just got their starting quarterback back. Something to keep an eye on there. Mercer at 8. The Word at 9. And as Jeff mentioned, the Grizz are at 10.
Although Mercer just gave up 2 weeks ago.
They gave up 55 to Samford. They came back and won against Western Carolina. That's a good win. But they have their biggie this week with East Tennessee State, a game we're picking on Bison game day on Saturday morning. And if you're a Bison fan, you want ETSU to win that. That only helps your resume going forward here.
Your lead is now down to 2 games.
Yeah, I biffed it on
Racer 1, help me.
South Dakota State.
Your cohort McFeely seems to be there's a little hint of jealousy.
Did you see we got a new addition to the set here?
I saw that.
I would say, just to put a finishing point on this, if the Bison win out, they're the 1. But there's nothing said and done in that. They got to go play South Dakota.
Most State's been playing well. That's no gimme.
Yeah, and Most State has to play both the Jacks and the Bison.
And UND can make a dent.
So that was my last point here, because I mean, First Bracketology is out right now. You can check it out at inforum.com. I don't have UND in because that loss to Youngstown, the most I think they can get to is 7. I don't think they're going to beat the Jacks or the Coyotes, but those games are in Grand Forks. They are such a different team in that building. Can that happen?
I think they go 1 of 2 in those games.
You think they split?
I think they're going to.
So if that's the case, then they're in.
That's a tough place.
If they get to 8, they're in. I don't think 7 and 5 would get UND in, even despite the fact they beat Montana, which now Montana they have them at the 10th ranked team. Yeah, those are going to be fascinating. Next week, South Dakota State goes to Grand Forks. With the Bison being off, I think all the Bison fans are going to be checking out that game next Saturday in Grand Forks. And then the following week, then South Dakota goes in there. That's a scheduling wonder there for UND to get them back-to-back, but that game at the end of the year, we saw Illinois State, and they got absolutely trounced by the Bison. Then Illinois State got blown out by Mostaert. That game in normal, UND goes to Illinois State, Jeff, could be for a playoff spot at the very last game of the season.
I think, there's no arguing that.
I mean, SPAC's team could actually win 9 games. Did you think they're a 9-win team when we saw them?
No. Welcome to the FCS.
Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're at here in 2024. So we'll see. But we got a full day of coverage lined up for you on Saturday morning. People are already asking, do we have another live animal? You've set the bar high after getting the racehorse
Dom, I cannot give you anything pre-shadowing what am I going to do. Ruins the surprise
factor.
factor.
That is true. I will say that. The surprise factor of seeing a racehorse come up to us and then start nudging you as we're on live television.
I got momentarily a little concerned there.
What were you worried about?
Well,
like eating your coat
Yeah,
or
do they have
something?
teeth? I mean, they're big animals, man.
That is not a small animal. That is correct. Were you worried like it was going to take? I was worried it was going to take a bite out of the set because it had its teeth on the bottom of the set right by. I'm like, oh boy, this could be something else.
I asked Madison the jockey. I go, no, he was fed right this morning.
And by the way, this is a lot of backslapping here, but Kolpak did a really cool story about our production team that makes the WDAY broadcast possible. You see me, you see Jeff, Kyle, and Sam every Saturday, but
small percentage of the whole
that
thing.
is nothing compared to what they do. What I guess let me ask you, what was the maybe surprising or thing you didn't know about? You're around us all the time, but what didn't you know about it?
I guess it was more of an appreciation for the four guys, led by Alex and Kyle and those guys. They get in a pickup, Logan and Chris, and they get them to pick up and drive for 2 days to East Tennessee. And here's the thing that I really appreciate. Yeah, it's one thing when you're going there, it's a new area, there's a sense of excitement there. You do your thing, but then you got to take down.
Correct.
Then you got to drive back.
Yepper. And they just did it this week. They got back Monday night.
5:30 Monday night.
Yeah, that was a long day, long week there.
And this isn't no StarCraft camper they're pulling. I mean, this is a huge thing.
Yeah. And we get to do it again next year. We're going to Charleston, South Carolina, and Nashville,
Citadel,
Tennessee.
Tennessee State.
It's going to be a lot more road miles coming up next year. So you can check that out. It's available at inforum.com. Bison game day, 10 a.m. inside the Dome. Rob Sobel's going to join us in anticipation of Election Day to chat about the Fargodome vote. Jeffrey,
please vote yes. Please.
I've had my thoughts on this, been known for the last 2 years.
Yep.
It needs it. I can't vote. I live in Moorhead. If I did live in Fargo, I would vote 10 times over to give this the 60% that it needs.
If I may, we still have 3 minutes left. Here's what I want to write about, and I think I will. That it's my generation that voted this building in the early 90s. I think actually the vote might have been 89 or something like that. And so it's my generation, and we've enjoyed it over the years, the last 3 decades. We've taken a lot of enjoyment, me being the city of Fargo and beyond. And I don't think we should leave this building in disrepair for the next generation to pay for it. Because if the tax doesn't go through, and it's a quarter cent, it's so small, you won't notice it, trust me. Nobody will notice a quarter cent sales tax. And so if that doesn't pass, the money's going to have to come from somewhere. Yeah. And I'm afraid and concerned that the taxpayers of Fargo, through property tax or whatever, our younger generation will have to fund that. That's my concern, and that's not right. Because they shouldn't be held liable
on the hook
for something we've enjoyed and voted in for so long. And there's $30 million, by the way, from the Dome's fund currently going into it. So don't give me that.
Yeah, the Dome's not paying anything for it.
Yeah, they're paying $30 million.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. I couldn't agree more on that. I will say the Dome saved the city in 2009. There's no other way to say it from when the flood came. I've enjoyed it. Thousands of families have enjoyed it, from anything from Ribfest to the boat shows to, I don't even talk about Bison football, Jeff. Just numerous concerts they've had there.
I don't either. Yeah,
just anything that we've been up to. I've seen musical acts I never thought in Fargo because they were able to play at the Dome.
When I saw Mick Jagger walk on stage at the Fargodome in the late 90s or something like that, I went, wow, this place has changed. We're growing up. 60%
is a high threshold. That's the thing.
That's my concern.
And the one in December hit 52%. So but I'll say this, and I talked to Dave Supas about this, the president of the Fargodome Authority. I thought personally it was tough. Special elections are tough. It happened in December. I don't know if they had all their ducks in a row. They have it now. It's a ballot it's an election year. It's a presidential election year. So people are going to come out and vote. The voting machines for the special election, there wasn't anything south of the mall.
South of 13th Avenue.
That's where all the new families who actually use the Dome. Right. No offense to you on the north side, but that's not the vote they want to reach. Yep. They got to get the votes that are that use the Dome on the south side of the city. That's not going to be the case here.
And you younger
Tuesday.
Generation voters got to get out there too.
Yep.
You got to get your friend. You people in your 20s, 30s. Yep. This is your future. I mean, by the time this is done, I will be staring retirement in the eye. So this is not about me and the press box and all that. This is all about the younger generation.
And again, for anybody that goes, if you go to the game on Saturday, right, just look at the concourse. Just look at that.
Look at the women standing in line for bathrooms.
It's like a cave in there. Yeah. It needs to happen, and hopefully it gets the necessary 60%. But Rob will join us to chat about that coming up on Saturday. Thanks to Jeff Kolpag and myself for listening. And if you missed any of our past shows, they're all available at inforum.com. We podcast them all. Spotify, Google Play, Apple iTunes, as you can find past podcasts. And we'll see everybody at the Dome on Saturday.